There are times in our lives when we wished we could have a stronger relationship with God. And yet, no matter how much we try, it seems that we are spiritually stuck. We cannot find the way to make it work. We pray and yet we don't feel His presence. We are filled with distractions. Sometimes we don't even want to pray. Thankfully, we are not passive pilgrims in our spiritual life. We have the power to choose differently. Let's take John. He is stressed out at work because his boss is demanding more and more of his time. He is conflicted because he has been coming home late. His wife is annoyed with him and there have been some fights lately. He tries to pray every morning but distractions overwhelm him at times. He is always thinking about his work projects. At times he does not even want to pray. He finds himself always facing the same frustrations at work and at home. He does not feel God's presence anywhere and wonders if God is listening to him. Lately, he came to the realization that he had it all wrong. He came to learn that all along he was like a child asking Santa Claus for the presents he wanted, instead of disposing himself to do what God wanted. He came to realize that this is not something that just happens, but that it required some kind of spiritual exercise. This was the intuition that St. Ignatius of Loyola had about 500 years ago. He encountered a similar situation, and came to the conclusion that it takes spiritual exercises to change our common disposition to control our lives, in order to turn it over to do God's will. He compared it to physical exercises. Just like jogging, strolling and running are physical exercises, he said, so are mental prayer, meditation and examination of conscience spiritual exercises. And just like we do physical exercises to stretch our muscles and make them strong, so are we to do spiritual exercises to strengthen our disposition in order to do God's will. The main challenge we face is our disordered affections. In the case of John, he had to examine his heart in order to find what he was so afraid of. Peeling the layers of his emotions, he had to be honest with himself and admit that his frustrations revealed hidden fears. He was afraid of losing his job. He was afraid that he would not be able to provide for his family. He would be a failure in their eyes. He was also afraid of having a difficult conversation with his boss. So, he was acting as a doormat, allowing his boss to dump more and more work on him. Eventually, he realized that he needed to bring all these fears to prayer. He needed to admit he was afraid and that he did not trust that God could come to his aid if he did not keep the situation under control. In a conversation with God, he realized that he was a control freak because he could not trust him. Eventually, as his trust in God grew, he was able to let go of fear. His confidence grew, and he realized he had to confront his boss in a difficult conversation about all the work demands imposed on him. During the entire exercise, John realized that he had been totally present with God. His distractions were gone. He was eventually able to deal with his fears and let go. It had not been easy, and yet, he was able to do it. The experience left John in a much better place with God. He had established a deeper relationship with Him and felt much more at peace. In this sense, prayer is a spiritual exercise. Growing in our relationship with God requires a constant struggle to let go of disordered affections, so as to make ourselves free and capable to accept God's will, no matter how difficult that may sound. This daily struggle is what spiritual exercises are all about. They are our spiritual workout. The more we incorporate this routine in our lives, the more we will stay spiritually fit. The more we will live joyful and fulfilled lives.